The ability to communicate, bottom line, gets you everything you want because you're able to express, you're able to understand others, you can make things happen.
Communicating effectively gives you the tools to understand what others have to say and helps you to tailor your own message. So how well you communicate determines how well you get your needs met.
The payoff of being a good communicator is pretty straightforward. People find that you are someone that they can depend on to hear what they're saying and to get the job done.
I'm definitely the youngest person in my job right now, one of the younger people in the company, and good communication skills really, bring me up to their level. I'm not looked at, oh, he's the new guy, he's the young guy. I'm a peer because I know how to communicate well, I know how to get my point across. In my field, communication is really important, especially when talking to clients in sales, so that is what I do. And I find that I tend to speak a little bit slower when I'm on the phone than I do in person. And I try to really work on my pronunciation. I want it to be understood what I'm saying. I don't want people to get the wrong impression, because if they get the wrong impression and have different expectations than we can meet, that can cause a real big problem, big issues.
In order to put a newscast on the air, I would take all the information that I needed to know. I would get together all the groups of people that needed to know what I had to tell them and laid it all out. This would happen hours before the actual product needed to be finished. And I would be very open to questions and comments, and as any kind of leader needs to be. And I would send everybody on their way and check in periodically with them and make sure that everybody was doing okay and knew what their role was. And once the newscast was done and once it got on the air and we rolled the credits at the end, it was done. And I knew that my job, as a communicator was done effectively. If you get your message across effectively, it only boosts your credibility. And if you are looked at as a good employee and you know what you're doing and know what you're talking about, you're going to be promoted through your company.
Your communication skills will be reflected in your performance. People who communicate effectively are able to convey their ideas without conflict or confusion.
Letting people know what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, getting input, giving feedback, providing evaluation are those things that really make an organization continue to grow and change in this day and age.
Being heard in organizations is very prized. Most organizations don't have a culture which really gets excited about people who are quiet. Most organizations get excited about people who have something to say, who understand issues, and those are all things of communication.
And effective communication is so important in the workplace because one of the most expensive resources is time. And it's very important that you be concise, that you don't waste time, that you get to the point.
For most business people, time is a valuable commodity and should not be wasted. So think about your message beforehand and decide what you want people to learn from it.
I had an incoming call from a Canadian company in Quebec, and right from the jump I knew that the guy spoke French as a first language and English as a second language. And I personally have no French skills. I don't know anything about the language. And so between us, I think we managed to confuse ourselves for about a good half an hour before we said, let's stop the conversation and get somebody involved who can really, make the fit. It was intense. I was sweating. I was pretty wore out by the time it was over, and I had accomplished nothing except for a bad first impression.
In communication, we're taught that there's a sender of a message and a receiver. This is called the communication chain. But unfortunately, sometimes that chain gets broken.
In order for me to communicate with an employee, to make sure that he understands exactly what I want, I try to explain it in a way that they will understand.
It's really hard. Communication is really hard. It's always about knowing who you're dealing with, who your personalities are that you're dealing with, because everybody needs to hear things a little bit differently.
None of us are the same. We come from different backgrounds, we've had different experiences. Words mean different things, actions mean different things. So I think that if you can start from the assumption that we're different, you'll work more closely to a goal of communication across those differences.
The textbook definition of barriers in communication is called noise. It's anything that prevents two people from understanding one another.
Noise could be that I'm very upset. Noise could be that you're upset. Noise could actually be noise, in that it's a loud, noisy environment. Noise could be that you come from a different place in the organization than I do, and because we come from different places in the organization, we speak a little bit of a different language.
For me, the problems in communication are one, when someone's not a good listener, or when someone likes to hear themselves talk.
The breakdown with me is a lot of times in the smallest details. I sometimes take for granted that people know as much as I do or as little as I do. So when I'm explaining something, a lot of times I'll skip over some very basic, little, tiny details.
Communication can be difficult because it breaks down for so many reasons. Noise can result from different backgrounds or perspectives, negative attitudes, or simply from not listening. So make sure that the other person is ready to receive your message. Pay attention to your message and to the response. And remember to leave sufficient time to do so. You may think that listening simply means being quiet when the other person is talking, but it's so much more than that. It's paying attention to what's being said and dropping all assumptions that you know what it's going to be.
Customers will come up to me and say, this isn't right. How come it's like this? Wouldn't this do this? And after 10 minutes of not listening to them, what do you think? And then I'll start talking about it and realize that I have to pay attention, and we'll go over the whole thing again.
Listening skills are really important to the communication process. And by that, I mean that it's important to hear what other people are meaning to say to you, not just what you want to hear. If, in fact, the other person is saying something in 10 words and you think they could say it in 3, you cut off after they said the 3rd or 4th word and you don't hear the other 7 or 6 words, which really did change the communication or the message.